Hey folks, I'm Jax, and today we're going to be touching on the Prot Warrior spec. Now, protection is in a really fun spot going into 9.15. Overall, there wasn't a tremendous number of changes. We did see that the Ravager ability actually had its hard cap removed and actually now has a soft cap for damage applied to enemies, but damage applied to more than 5 enemies basically. So nice to see that get changed up. We did see some buffs to the Venthyr Conduit, Harrowing Punishment. The Impending Victory talent actually had its cooldown reduced to 25 seconds from 30 and heals for 40% of your health as opposed to 30. So that's encouraging overall if you're looking for more self-sustain. Really Sinful Surge, which is the Venthyr Legendary that you can pick up for Warrior, now extends the duration of Avatar by 2.5 seconds when Condemn is cast. In 9.1, it was actually when Last Stand would effectively have its duration extended. So that's encouraging for the most part. For me personally, it's not enough to change the legendaries of choice for the most part, but interesting to see where we're at. Now, in a moment, we're going to touch on the talents specific for the build, but before we do that, we're going to touch quickly just on the Covenants. So what you see here, and it won't be totally shocking if you're familiar with the class, but Kyrian is making up the majority of all the protection tanks out there, and like, no major surprise. Kyrian, whether it's in Prot, Arms, or Fury, has a great set of legendaries for us. Necrolord, not getting a lot of love, only 10% of the group out there. Although if you're playing in a composition that benefits from Mastery, there's some cases to be made. Night Fae only being used a fifth of the time at 20%. I think there's actually more opportunity here, and I think we'll see more Night Fae Warriors as 9.15 rolls through, and we're able to swap between Covenants a little bit more easy. And then Venthyr is at, almost 13%. And while we did see some buffs to Venthyr Conduits, Condemn is just so punishing in terms of raid consumption, or rage consumption, excuse me, that it's kind of worth checking out what all the other builds are out there. Even from a Mythic Plus perspective, it's great to knock down enemies, but with Condemn not having a huge number of enemies that it can damage, definitely a little bit challenging as far as the build goes. Now, when we jump into talents, what we're going to recommend is what you see on the screen here right now. Go with Devastator for Tier 1. Tier 2 can be whatever necessarily supports your build. For me, I typically go with Storm Bolt. It's the only stun that warriors can have, but having it on a 30-second cooldown is just exceptional. Double time is also additionally effective if you're looking to carry a lot of groups and try to just increase some rage generation as well. So it's definitely a case. Rumbling Earth, it's there if you like it. I don't know. I don't pull Rumbling Earth very often, but there is that synergy there with Shockwave. Tier 3, you want to go with Best Serve Colds. The increased damage to Revenge by 20%, as well as increasing it by 50% when you're able to cast it. Just makes a huge difference. Tier 4, Crackling Thunder really increases the radius of Thunderclap by 50%. Also increases the slow amount by 10%. So this is actually absolutely key, with kiting still being the meta in Mythic Plus. Like, Bounding Stride is absolutely a raid talent. Menace doesn't really have any kind of utility. Tier 6, you've got really Indomitable, being able to increase your max health by 10% and heal you for 1%. For every 10 rage you spend is just a huge difference maker. I think it's actually the only viable option here. You can play around with Never Surrender or Impending Victory, but they're not the same. Even with the buffs to Impending Victory, it's not going to be enough to get you away from having your base stat line increased. Tier 6, You've got a couple of choices here. You can go with Into the Fray or Ravager. And Ravager is probably what you want to take in AoE situations when you know that you're going to see high numbers of packs coming at you. So real easy build there. Alternatively, Into the Fray, it's probably the most boring talent on the row. But ultimately, it's pretty solid, if not boring, for both single target and AoE situations. So it's pretty rare that you won't get the 10% haste bust that comes with this talent. So keep that in mind. Ravager if you're just looking for max DPS, or Into the Fray if it complements your build. Having an additional 10 haste never hurt a warrior ever. Finally, tier 7, we're down into the fun. So all 3 of these talents are credible. You'll see a lot of guides out there that try to say that, like, for Mythic Plus, it's coming down to either anger management or bolster, and it really just kind of comes down to what your preferences. Anger management definitely helps your offense, and we're absolutely one of those classes that our best defense is a lot of offense to help the DPS burn the competition down. Bolster, it gets advertised as the best defensive option. It really helps like close the gap between shield block uptime. Really minimizes the amount of damage you take to the face. However, if you start to look at the different legendary builds out there, you can combine the Reprisal Legendary, which is like where your charge and intervene grant you shield block, revenge, and generate 20 rage. Combine that with Heavy Repercussions, and you'll actually find that you get more than 90% uptime on your shield block. So Bolster and Heavy Repercussions are totally credible choices. It just kind of comes down to what the playstyle is. If you think you'll be doing a lot of charge, if you're thinking about doing a lot of charge, maybe Stormbolt isn't the play for you. But think through it either way. See if you'll be kiting a lot. See if those charges or intervenes are going to be the difference maker for you, or if you decide to choose a certain mix of legendaries and see where the game takes you from there. Like we mentioned, like Reprisal is the best legendary probably for Mythic Plus, both on an offensive and defensive perspective. It really grants charge and intervene, the added bonus of 4 seconds of shield block, free revenge, additional 20 rage. Basically smooths out your gameplay for Mythic Plus. Any kind of it gives you a really high uptime on packs. It prevents us from having to really suffer without any active mitigation, which always feels good. I've been tanking a bit with my Vengeance Demon Hunter, and no mitigation feels terrible. That's something that you'll have to get used to playing. Like, certainly if you're charging in, picking up aggro on a pack, you'll have to get comfortable with like incorporating your heroic leap, and that's where it starts to get kind of interesting, right? You could go with more of like a double time effect that increases the number of charges you have, and then maybe go with Bounding Stride to get heroic leap up more often, and then that way you're really tying into the kite meta. Signet of Tormented Kings is a fun legendary. I use it on my DPS warriors specs, both Fury and Arms, just kind of casually. So if you're interested in like what's the one generic legendary that you could push to max eye level that would fit them all, that's a very easy one. Basically taking your avatar and giving it a miniature version of Recklessness or Bladestorm. Really it increases your damage throughput, right? And that's what Warrior is known for, our burst AoE. So kind of attractive from that perspective. Alternatively, the Wall is probably the best all-around legendary. It's the best defensively for raiding and probably easiest to use, basically granting your shield slam 5 more rage per cast, and reduces the cooldown of shield wall by 5 seconds per cast. So that makes a huge difference. Like, taking down shield wall from a 3.5 minute cooldown to whatever your DPS can muster is absolutely like a key. Well, I don't even want to call it a key. It's just a critical way to improve your gameplay. So certainly worth checking out. From a Covenant perspective, I'm incredibly excited to be able to swap in between Covenants. Kyrian, like we kind of mentioned before, definitely the most popular of the classes out there. Just doesn't fit with my arms and fury preferences to play Venthyr and just mash enemies with Condemn all the time. So being able to jump over and pick up the Spear of Bastion, which is just a fantastic AoE ability, generate the 25 rage on cast and tether targets just like Ursock's Vortex, will be absolutely incredible in a Mythic Plus environment. So worth checking out that one. Overall, like, Condemn is probably the most fun for me in terms of Covenant abilities, but it just feels really clunky because you're just consuming a whole bunch of rage as you knock out these enemies, but it's just super satisfying. Like, just incredibly satisfying to get that knocked out. Where it does get challenging, it's like you're giving up some defensive throughput, whether that's shield block or ignore pain. But if you're like me and you like to just mow down the opponents, because that's what warriors are there for, it's absolutely a super satisfying way to roll. Alternatively, like Ancient Aftershock, that's a well understood frontal cone. That's been incredibly helpful, and it generates more rage than Spear of Bastion, which you see in terms of a Mythic Plus environment. That's pretty darn solid overall, as well as you're getting a bit of a CC from the stun that it provides. The fact it's only on a 1.5-minute cooldown, it actually lines up well with a few different trinkets and abilities. So totally worth checking out if you are wondering which Covenant to go with. So if you're purely going prot, I'd say go Kyrian, then go Night Fae. If you're like me and you just like casually going prot and smashing your opponents, then this is one heck of a way to go. I think overall, folks, those are the kind of the big speaking points that I was hoping to touch on. Take advantage of Whirlwind and Ravager not being target capped anymore. Enjoy as much of this execute uptime as you possibly can, and I hope to hear y'all back from y'all soon. Let me know what tank you're rolling with, if it's going to be Prot Warrior, and let me know what Covenant you're going to stick with in jumping into 9.15. Alright folks, hope you enjoy the new content, and I will talk to y'all soon. Later.